Hello everyone, welcome to my top 10 picks from the 2015 7-day roguelike challenge. There was some pretty stiff competition this year, so those that made it into the top 10 had to fight off a selection of really strong candidates. This one is my number 10. It's called Rollgue. Well, I assume that's how it's pronounced. It's the word rogue with a pair of L's in the middle, to denote the fact that instead of an at symbol or a sprite or whatever you otherwise use to represent your adventurer in roguelikes, instead you're a die, a d6. And that's really the central conceit of this game. It isn't particularly deep or nuanced in terms of its mechanics, but it is novel, and the fact that the dice actually integrate into the gameplay, is fairly intriguing. So I'll show you how it works. I assume you're not going to be able to see my pointer. Bandicam tends not to show it in the recording for some reason, which is a little inconvenient with this game, but I'll try to explain. It's entirely mouse controlled, and the way you move your d6, which represents your adventure or whatever, in this case, Femides the purple, the way it moves depends on where on the die you begin your drag. You drag to move, and if you begin sort of on the side, see there's a side facing us, if you start your drag near the top of that side towards the top of the die and drag, then you will leap up like this. And if you start near the bottom, then you'll sort of skid along the floor like this. So different kinds of maneuvers, and that's where the challenge of the game comes from initially. It can be a little frustrating to begin with, because learning to maneuver the die is a bit of a pain. Especially getting through doors. This is one of my few complaints about this game, other than relative lack of depth, is that there's no reason for getting through doors to be as difficult as it is. But we'll progress to the next room, and I'll show you a bit more of how the game actually plays. So, here we've encountered a monster, and immediately we have to roll for initiative like it's D&D. So you just click on your die here, and then you see what numbers come up. Oh, the enemy won, because although he rolled lower, if we hover over him, we'll see he has a speed of 2, we have a speed of 0, so he actually gets a bonus of 2 on his roll, which gave him an effective 3 in the initiative roll. The game doesn't really explain how combat works, so what I'm going to tell you is based on my own observations and deductions. It seems as though it's a combination of the number that your die shows and whether you hit the enemy. So the number that comes up is added to your strength, if any, in our case 0, and the armor value of the opponent, in this case 0, would also be deducted from that to see if we actually inflict any damage. But if we were to just fling our die away into the left-hand corner, we would not actually bump the opposing die, and any number we rolled would be irrelevant. That seems to be my understanding. You need to actually knock the dice together and get a decent number. So like this, we got a 2, and that was a kill straight away. I hate these wooden floors, because if you hit them to like that, God, that was close. If you send your die flying up and you land on the wooden floors, it's entirely possible to bust them open and then plunge through to your death. But we'll move on to the next room. And this is basically how the game goes. This blue dome thing down here is a health refill, but we don't need that at the moment. So we're going to have to roll for initiative. And in this case, he's very slow. He's got a -3 speed, so we actually won the initiative. So we'll start our attack here. Oh, launched up a bit there. And then there's another attack by the enemy. And we proceed like this with health being taken off and damage being done until one or the other of us wins. So we'll rotate around with our keyboard shortcuts here. There's the other door. So you can use WASD to move the camera around and Q and E to rotate like this, which is going to be absolutely vital, because as you may notice, if you're like this, you basically can't see that door. So, do we need that health? We don't, but we did gain a level, so that's nice. Okay, let's get through this door. No, No, don't want to get through the door. As I said, it's one of my complaints about this game that there's really no reason for getting through the doors to be this difficult. But hopefully you're getting the impression I'm trying to convey here, which is that the idea of combining actual physical sort of spatial combat, in the sense of bumping your die into an opposing die, with randomised die rolls is a fairly novel way of approaching this. Strength up, so you can actually get a strength boost. That's a good one to get. Wooden floors though, so watch out for those. It's a bit random. You know, the fact that it's basically rolling a die against another die is kind of an issue. There isn't as much determinism in it as I would like. But considering it's a 7-day project, I think it came out really well, and it's a very novel idea. Whether it'll have much longevity is a different matter entirely. I can't see myself still playing this 6 months down the line, but it's very much worth checking out for the novelty of the idea, if nothing else. And it is pretty fun to play, as long as you don't expect any great depth from the game. So, as we try to take down this white D6 here from our position hiding inside the doorway. Oh no! Really not doing well in this particular fight. It's a fairly weak opponent though. And we have our strength bonus which we just picked up. And we did manage to get a nudge in there. Excellent. So, as we finish that off, I will leave you with this. This is Rollgue, my number 10 pick for the 2015 7-Day Roguelike Challenge entries. Number 9 to follow, but this one is my number 10. Worth checking out. Rollgue.